I'm Reagan, and I'm so happy that you're here with us. If you're watching online, I just want to welcome you. Tell us in the chat where you're tuning in from. And if you're at Lightridge, hi! We have officially been back in person for a good few months now, and I love getting together in person with our church family again. This summer, we are excited to be launching some new groups. If you are looking for ways to connect with others, make some new friends, or just want a regular encouragement from a positive environment, check out our groups. We have a new group coming very soon about family life. So parenting, marriage, and the 3 Russell girls may or may not be starting a new group very soon. You can explore all of these different groups on our app and sign up there. I am also excited to invite all of you to join us on the 4th of July for what we're calling our July Hop Breakfast. We recently mixed it up and met at IHOP for breakfast instead of doing our usual church gathering, so we're going to do it again. It was so much fun to just be able to connect with each other over a meal and then join our online church gathering afterwards. So join us on Sunday morning at 8:30, July 4th at IHOP as we eat together. You then can join us online for our usual online gathering at 10 a.m. I hope to see you there. Wherever you're watching from, I'm so happy that you joined us today. Happy Sunday.
Dulles family, hey, welcome to a pretty unique spot. This is actually a place that I come to often. It's here in Aldie, not far from Lightridge High School. I come here a lot to walk and think and listen and talk to God. And I've written messages from this place. And today, we just thought, because of the topic today, in wrapping up our Healthy series and what we're going to read in Psalm chapter 1, that this would really be an ideal spot to talk to you from. So we are wrapping up a series about health, about being healthy people, living healthy lives, and healthy people who make up a healthy church. And the challenge to people like you and me who really care about health, or maybe we're thinking about it intentionally for the first time this month, the challenge for people like us is we live in America. We live in the West, where we are taught in college, in high school. I would say today we're taught as early as preschool. It's ubiquitous in society, the idea that success is what should drive us. It's really the centerpiece of life. What's primary or priority should be success, the goal of success. And we just don't believe that here at Dulles. We believe health should be what drives us. And so a recent, in fact, would you hand me the book that I have here? I just want to remind you again of this book that has inspired our directional team here in the last year. Patrick Lencioni is a recent voice who said in a new kind of fresh way what we've believed all along at Dulles, which is health should be what drives us more than anything. Thank you. The Advantage is this book that I highly recommend. His audience is companies and corporations, but what he says to companies, we believe applies to organizations, teams, families, and certainly to our church. And that is that success, if success is what is primary to you or your organization or your family or to a place like a church, then success isn't sustainable. Inevitably, if success is what drives you, inevitably internal division, internal competition, politics, divisiveness will eventually leak in and take over. It's health that makes the family sustainable, the relationships sustainable, your influence lasting. And so we're committed here at Dulles Church to being a healthy place. We've chosen, I said this in week 1, we choose here at Dulles to be healthy people so we can be the church that God intends. A church that gives hope, creates new, and changes society. We really believe that. As audacious as that sounds, we believe the church is supposed to be the safest, most compelling, most powerful force in the world. And it begins with you and I prioritizing health above attendance or numbers or quarterly growth over one quarter to the next. When success is your driving force or your driving priority, then you're going to end up not just competing with the people around you, you're going to compete against yourself from one year to the next. And what God calls us to is the idea and the goal of health. Healthy should be our goal. Okay, I have a fetish, like this nerdy fetish with giant sequoia trees. I've been to California many times, and I've probably stood under or stood next to giant sequoia trees, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 times now. One of my good friends lives on a street where a giant sequoia is at the entrance of the community. So you drive past it every day, and they're just remarkable. They're the oldest living organisms on Earth. They live in healthy conditions. They live past 3,000, 3,500 years, even 4,000 years. There are a couple of sequoia trees in Muir Woods and Yosemite that are believed to be 5,000 years old. And so I stand next to these trees, and it just kind of takes me back into this place, this mental place where I appreciate history, and to be standing or touching a tree that was there, growing there before Jesus walked on earth is just remarkable to me. They're the oldest living organism. They're the largest organism on earth. And so I asked somebody, some sequoia expert, hey, is it possible that a sequoia could live and thrive in Virginia with all of our humidity in summer and our cold winters? And they said, yeah, sequoias are resilient. They can live pretty much anywhere if the conditions are healthy. If you make its growing conditions healthy, it can live in Virginia and grow in Virginia. And so I started studying that like a big goober, and Mackenzie surprised me a year and a half ago, and for my birthday, she gave me a little sapling. It's probably the size of one or two of my fingers. And so I knew what to do at that point, or I thought I did. I got a big pot, and one of the healthy growing conditions for a sequoia is the soil. There can be no debris, no mulch, no decaying debris at all in the soil. It has to be really pure soil. And to compensate for the humidity, the harsh humidity in Virginia and the cold winters, a sequoia really needs lots of sunlight, lots of water. You can't overwater them. The more water, the better, the healthier the condition. And then the third thing that I learned is that you have to supplement the soil here in Virginia with heavy nitrogen. Sequoias love nitrogen in the soil, and we don't have a lot of that here in Virginia. And so you need to supplement it with organic, farm-sourced nitrogen, which is a fancy way of saying chicken poop. And so I bought a bag of chicken poop right away. I could say chicken manure, but I just like saying chicken poop better. And I put all of these ingredients together and planted that sapling. And man, I'm telling you, that thing took off. I would tell my family, I think you can almost see it growing. Within 4 or 5 months, it had tripled in size. And just yesterday, I went out in the backyard and took a picture of it, and it had reached 23 inches. I actually measure this thing. I really am a nerd when it comes to this stuff. And I think it's doubled or tripled in size again since last year. And get this expert that I've met at Yosemite, who's helped me with this, we email, he told me that if I keep the conditions healthy, and it makes it through year 2. In year 3, he predicts it will grow 6 feet, and an extra 6 feet just next year in year 3. So my goal is that in my lifetime, I will have grown one of the only sequoia trees in Virginia, and that anywhere in the Dulles area, if you're in the right spot on Route 50 or wherever, you'll see the sequoia tree above everything else. All right, I know that isn't like an interest to a lot of people, and like my family worries about me sometimes, the things that are hobbies in my life. But it takes me to a place where we learn about God's dream for you and me. And it's why I'm standing here by this water today. Psalm chapter 1 is such an interesting psalm. We know that Psalms, the book of Psalms, is the biggest book of the Bible. There's 150 Psalms. It's a passionate book that tells us how to know God, how to walk with Him, how to hear God. And when life seems upside down or we don't easily hear God, it tells us how to trust that God is there and He's working in our lives. It's a book of poetry and it's a book of prayer. And Psalm chapter 1 was specifically selected to be the first psalm. I grew up in church just believing they were just randomly placed in some order, but actually the book of Psalms was ordered very intentionally, and Psalm 1 was placed as the first psalm on purpose. And the first 3 verses is what we're going to look at today, are the first 3 verses of the whole book of Psalms for a very intentional purpose. They tell us what God's ultimate dream, what His ultimate goal is for you and me, which is health. So read along with me here, Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight, blessed is the one, not who sits and stands and walks in the way of influence that ends up leaving us disappointed or frustrated or not in real success. But blessed is the one who instead delights in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on His law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. When I read this years ago, it wasn't just like reading part of the Bible or trying to be religious. There was a day when I read these 3 verses in Psalm 1 where something sparked in me, where I just said, that's what I want. This is what I want for my life. I want to be blessed like this person. I want to walk in this kind of favor of God. I want everything in my life to prosper. And of course, Psalms talks about storms of life, and there are days where we ask God, are you there? It's a very honest book of poetry that takes us to these real places that you and I experience. But even in those moments, and even in these days when we struggle to feel God, this tells us that God, even in those moments, is going to prosper our lives if we do these things. So let's just look at each of these 3 verses for just a few minutes. These verses are describing a person who's planted for growth. A person who is intentionally living life to thrive and grow. Verse 1 says, don't be the person who walks or stands or sits, and there's these negative terms like where the wicked are, or sinners, or mockers, and that can sound heavy, and I even question, like, I certainly don't see myself as wicked in any way. Do I even know anyone who's wicked? And wicked can sound like murderers and like awful people, but in God's language, wicked is somebody who feeds themselves or is influenced by something that leaves you short of what God intends for you. And so that's what God's directing us away from. This is really asking us, what or who influences you? Is it the thinking and the voices of society, or is it something with a lot more depth that leads you to true success, where you'll actually prosper in every part of your life? I took this picture not long ago, about a year and a half ago, in South Riding, where I live. In our town, all the sidewalks started to be broken up, and this big project started where all the tree roots that had buckled the sidewalks were being cut and piled up, and the sidewalks were being repoured. And I just wondered, like, man, this is a lot of money. You know, there's 5,500 homes in our community. This is a lot of sidewalks and a lot of tree roots being cut. Is this necessary? And somebody in the community explained to me, it actually is. When you think about older people who need to walk, need these sidewalks, it's actually a part of their prescriptive life. The sidewalks need to be safe, and also for little kids, and really for everybody. And so I realized, wow, yeah, that makes sense. The problem that was explained to me is not the trees themselves, but the shallow roots. Shallow tree roots that don't go very deep actually become destructive to a community and can be unsafe. And so we're going to cut them out. And an arborist told me, yeah, it seems like we could kill the trees doing this, but actually when you cut just the shallow roots, it really doesn't affect the trees at all. And I came home and just took some notes in my journal that the root is sometimes the root of the problem, the shallow root. God wants us not influenced by the shallowness that can often be the voices of influence around you. God wants us going deep into something very special that leads us into this life of being influencers, and where we are actually shaping the thinking of others, where they walk in hope and live hope, real hope, the story of hope that you and I have experienced from Jesus. And so he's calling us into something much deeper, which takes us to verse 2. Instead of being influenced by these voices or these shallow thinkers, the person who's blessed delights in the law of the Lord. Delight is this word that means enjoys thinking on or dwelling on. Thinking on God isn't like a religious exercise. It's certainly not like homework. It's something that you actually enjoy thinking about, the way of God, his plan, what his dream is for people, for humans, for you and me, for those around us. We actually enjoy thinking about God's will and his timing and how he responds to hurt. When we actually enjoy thinking of or thinking on the way of God, it seeps into us and starts to change our minds. We talked about this in our mental health week. We actually change the way we think, which transforms us. God transforms us, we learned in Romans, by the renewing of our minds. And one way that our minds change, certainly, is by thinking on, dwelling on, enjoying the ideas of God, the voice of God. And another word for this is meditate. The one who has God's favor, the one who's blessed by God, delights in the law of the Lord. This is translated from the Old Hebrew into law of the Lord, but it's actually the Hebrew word Torah. And Torah, up until this point, until Psalms was written, referred to the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The 5 books of Moses were the Torah. But the word Torah actually just means teaching. And so it's interesting that Psalms ends up being 5 separated books that together make up the book of Psalms. And what the psalmists are telling us here in Psalm chapter 1 is the one who dwells on the teachings of God, the one who dwells on, who meditates on what God wants us to think, what God's perspective of the world is, of those around you, what God's dream is, what his timing is. Those who meditate on God's teaching thrive and are healthy and walk in his blessing and favor. That's really what the law of the Lord is here. It's not religious language that's calling us to be religious people. It's saying if you are somebody who enjoys dwelling on the teaching of God, you are going to thrive in every part of your life. And that takes us to verse 3. You will be like the person who's planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. I want to be a person who prospers in whatever I do. Is life challenging? Of course it is. Is it disappointing? Yes. Life can be disappointing. Do hurt people hurt people? Yes. You and I are going to experience hurt by other people. But God works in all of those disappointments and hurts so much so in his life, in the health that he wants us to live, that even in disappointment, we prosper. We end up being influencers. We end up thriving financially, in our relationships, in the way that we change society, in the kind of church that we are together, prospering in every single thing we do. It's interesting that Psalm chapter 1 was selected as the first psalm on purpose, and the first 3 verses are what launched this whole book about walking in step with God and knowing him and discerning his heart and being patient when you don't feel God, because he is at work in your life and he will show that he's trustworthy. This book, it's amazing to tell us that we can, walking on this earth, actually know the living God, creator God. It begins, these 3 verses, these opening verses begin with the word blessed, and they end with the word prospers. And that is not an accident. This is God telling us what he wants for you and what he wants for me. God wants you and I to walk in his favor. This is what healthy people do. They don't listen and chase after and dream about the shallowness that leaves so many people disappointed and sad and lonely in this world. But we delight in, we chase after, we think on and meditate on the teaching of God, the heart of God, the will, the dream of God, the timing of God, God's personality. So much so, that person will be like a tree planted by streams of water, whose leaf never withers, regardless of the storms or the cold seasons, the environment, whatever happens, whatever stresses that person encounters, their leaf continues to thrive. And in whatever they do, they prosper. I want to be full of that kind of life and that kind of life giver to others. And so as we end this series, I just want to put some challenges or thoughts in front of you, how to practice this week, like right now, how to start practicing some of this. First of all, our church gatherings. If you're in the Dulles area, it is time to gather. We need each other. In the New Testament, the word together is used so many times. In fact, I should have looked that up again, how many times the word together is used. We are to worship together. We are to serve others together. We are to encourage one another together. We're to create new in this world together. We're not intended to thrive in God's life for us alone or apart from one another. And it's time to gather. We are in a beautiful space now at Light Ridge High School. If you're not in the Dulles area, keep gathering together like this. Prioritize this time. I mean, wherever you live, schedule it. Make alarms on Sunday mornings or on weekends that we're going to get together. And it's remarkable how encouraging it is to chat online and say hi. People tell me all the time it's encouraging. They feel like they're part of a church community when they see other people saying hi. And that goes for you too. Don't just passively watch or take in our church experience just for yourself. Tell us where you're watching from. People find that encouraging. Tell us who you are. Others who are watching don't feel like they're alone when they see you saying hello or, hey, I'm in this with you. Our groups, we've been talking about groups. Many people have been signing up for our 5 or 6 week midsummer groups this coming month. We have 4 specific groups, one for men, one for women, one group for anybody that's about communication. Jan's going to be leading that again, finding your communication style and understanding the communicators around you. It's a fantastic 6-week study that we've gotten great feedback on. Alton's going to be leading this group on marriage and parenting and just finding encouragement from one another in living what we sometimes call dysfunctional families. I think it's going to be inspiring. Sign up for one of our groups. Prioritize your time with others. Parents, I'm going to just challenge you to not fall into the temptation of giving your child every opportunity. We know what that's like. Amy and I know what it is to want to give our girls every opportunity possible. But there's a temptation to think that we can, in giving our kids every temptation, put church on hold or teach our children that the real important things in life are all the weekly activities, and that church is there for emergencies or for special holidays or for when there's nothing else conflicting in our schedule. And if you inadvertently teach your children that church is this place to go to be encouraged once in a while when there's nothing else on the calendar, they will grow up taking on that view of God, that God is there for emergencies or God is there just kind of in random times. Prioritize showing your kids how important it is to you and for them that your family prioritizes the movement of God for your family and for our community, for their community. Financially, do whatever you have to do to avoid debt. And if you're in debt, tenaciously fight to get out of debt. This is all a part. These are just ideas and challenges from personal experience, personal conviction that I'm putting in front of you here to be healthy people. Practical steps to take to be healthy people. Tenaciously fight to get out of debt and work hard at prioritizing generosity in your budget. And while I'm at it, I'm going to just say it again. Work hard at working generosity to your church into your budget. If you're new, just keep watching and keep attending and keep gathering with us. But if you're not new here at Dulles, you should be an investor. It is part of God's plan for our lives that we prioritize the way we live our lives and the way we spend, that we are investors in what He's doing through us as a church movement in our world. Prioritize relationships that feed you, friendships that challenge you towards health, that don't promote shallow talk and negative talk about other people. Listen, we've talked about these things throughout this series. I wanted to end our time today just putting again some practical steps that you and I can take to jumpstart this idea that I am going to move into health. I'm going to live and lean into health. And we're going to finish these 5 weeks together today by saying we are going to chase after the blessing of God, the favor of God, by not delighting in or enjoying the shallow, leave us empty or depleted or lonely kinds of influence or voices. We are going to delight in the teaching of God, the heart of God, what matters to Him. So much so that it fills every part of our lives with life. We'll be like trees planted by streams of water where the challenges and stresses of life just don't wither our productivity and what we produce, the fruit that is produced in our lives, and everything that we do prospers. That's my dream for me, my family. That's my dream for you and for our church family. And so God, make this our reality. That whatever our work stress is or our life challenge or whatever challenges we're facing as parents right now, that we would chase after and lean into your teaching so much that we would see ourselves experiencing life and improvement and better in every area of life. Jesus, lead us into the life where we prosper in everything and whatever we do. I love you guys. I tell you that, I think every week. I try to. I really do. Those of you who watch online, everybody who's gathering at Light Ridge High School, I love being church with you. And I love being part of this tribe. with you. I'll see you online this week.